Welcome back to our news bulletin. New Zealand has become the first country to turn coronavirus free with no new cases reported and no active cases. Meanwhile, in Brazil, 1,382 more people died from COVID-19 as the death toll crossed 37,000. The US has recorded 722 deaths overnight, taking the tally to over 110,000. The global death toll from the coronavirus has exceeded 402,000, with confirmed cases over 7 million. Further details in this report.
When the world is struggling to contain the COVID-19 pandemic, New Zealand has become virus-free. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has announced to lift the country's remaining virus restrictions at midnight. Meanwhile, Americas are still the hardest hit region of the world, with death tolls jumping every day. But the New York state is set to emerge from its long coronavirus lockdown today. In the UK, Health Minister Matt Hancock says the anti-racism protests attended by the thousands of people are increasing the risk of virus spread.
The virus itself doesn't discriminate, and gathering in large groups is temporarily against the rules precisely because it increases the risk of the spread of this virus. So I would urge people to make their argument, and I will support you in making that argument, but please don't spread this virus, which has already done so much damage and which we're starting to get under control.
Elsewhere in Asia, restrictions are also being relaxed in Indonesia and India. China says it will further strengthen the country's public health system to enhance its capacity of response to public health emergencies.
First, we will further improve the input mechanism for public health, improve the basic conditions for disease prevention and control, and further strengthen and improve public health services. Second, we will have a more specific mandate for the functions of disease control centers at different levels.
In South Korea, new cases have slowed, but concerns remain over a second wave of the outbreak as the country enters its final phase of reopening schools.
Pakistan has become the 16th country to have reported over 100,000 confirmed coronavirus cases. The health ministry says over the past 24 hours, 65 people lost their lives, bringing the total number of deaths to 2,067. With 4,728 fresh cases reported, the tally of confirmed patients now stands at 103,671. The ministry said over 34,000 patients of coronavirus have recovered so far. In the fresh act of state terrorism, Indian troops have martyred 4 more Kashmiris in Shopian district. This takes the death toll to 9 in the past 24 hours. The occupying forces killed the civilians in a cordon and search operation in Pinjura area of the district. 5 youth were martyred by the troops in the same area yesterday. The authorities also suspended all mobile internet services in the district during the operation. Islamabad has strongly rejected the allegations by Indian Ministry of External Affairs, calling Pakistan a nerve center of terrorism. The Foreign Office said Delhi's statement completely distorts facts to advance its false and self-serving narrative. FO spokesperson Aisha Farooqi said the remarks of Prime Minister Imran Khan have been completely twisted by Anurag Srivastav. She said Delhi's statement is a continuation of their desperate campaign to divert international attention from India's state terrorism in IOK. Farooqi said Pakistan has been the principal victim of terrorism, including militancy from across the border. She said that Indian policy to destabilize parts of Pakistan and using terrorism against its neighbors is well known. Farooqi said Pakistan's role as a facilitator to the ongoing peace process in Afghanistan has been widely acknowledged. The Taliban have met US Special Envoy for Afghanistan's KHALILZAD and NATO Forces Commander General Austin Scott Miller in Doha. The group spokesperson Suhail Shaheen said their leader Mullah Baradar Khund discussed the prisoners' release and intra-Afghan talks. Shaheen said the Qatari delegation led by Mutlaq al-Qahtani also participated. Earlier, KHALILZAD called on Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa. The two spoke of matters relating to national security, Afghan refugees and border security. KHALILZAD is visiting Doha, Islamabad and Kabul as part of efforts to bring peace in Afghanistan. Protests sparked by the custodial killing of African-American George Floyd have spread globally, in addition to all 50 US states. Battered with increasing calls to deliver justice, the Minneapolis City Council has pledged to dismantle the local police department. Council President Lisa Bender says the body aims to come up with a new community-led model of public safety. Further details in this report.
Protesters have taken to the streets across the world as demonstrations against police brutality and racism entered their 13th day. In the US, one of the largest protests was held in Los Angeles, where an estimated 20,000 people packed the Hollywood Boulevard. In New York, at least half a dozen loosely organized groups of protesters marched through the city.
Black Lives Matter, yes, we out here supporting all lives matter, but Black Lives Matter too.
In New York, at least half a dozen loosely organized groups of protesters marched through the city, chanting slogans to defund the police. European cities have also witnessed mass gatherings. In Brussels, thousands marched against systemic prejudice and incidents of looting luxury stores were reported. In the UK, the statue of a 17th century slave trader in Bristol was thrown into the harbour on the second day of protests.
Well, I think first of all, when it came to what happened yesterday in London on Whitehall with the protesters, I'm absolutely sickened and appalled by the level of violence that was on display. Police officers were abused and police officers were injured, and we have a police officer that is seriously injured and in hospital right now, and that is absolutely unacceptable.
But the British Interior Minister called on the protests to be stopped following violent clashes in London. Meanwhile, in Madrid, some 3,000 protesters observed a minute's silence for Floyd and other victims of police brutality and institutional racism.
In a similar development in Hong Kong, dozens of people gathered in front of the US consulate to protest the custodial killing of George Floyd. The protesters stood in pouring rain, holding photos of Floyd and signs in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. The demonstrators said Hong Kong has been fighting police brutality, and the same thing is happening across the US. Police kept reminding demonstrators of the limit of 8 people per gathering, a rule put in place to contain coronavirus in the city. The protesters left peacefully after reading a speech to the Consul General condemning police brutality and racism. The Black Lives Matter movement against racial injustice has gone global amid the pandemic since Floyd's death on 25th May. Iran's foreign ministry says Tehran is ready for further prisoners exchange with the United States. In an interview, spokesperson Abbas Mousavi praised Switzerland's efforts in a recent swap of inmates. He said there were no direct talks between Tehran and Washington. Last Thursday, U.S. Navy veteran was freed as part of a deal in which the U.S. allowed an Iranian physician to visit Iran. Mousavi also said that Washington can return to the 2015 nuclear deal. He added that Tehran never left the negotiating table. Forces of the Government of National Accord and Libyan National Army are engaged in fierce fighting for the strategic city of Sirte. After ceding Tripoli, Khalifa Haftar's LNA has launched a barrage of airstrikes to defend the town known for its loyalty to the slain Muammar Gaddafi. The LNA has claimed to destroy the UN-recognized government's artillery company in an air attack. Haftar's forces said the strikes hit 2 GNA tanks and 6 armed vehicles. The Eastern Army claimed numerous Turkish and Syrian mercenaries were killed in the raids. Meanwhile, the GNA says it has retaken key towns around Sirte as its forces battle on to free the east from Haftar's forces. Tensions in the region are high since GNA announced full control of the capital Tripoli last week. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he will not approve the establishment of a Palestinian state as part of the annexation plan. In an interview, Netanyahu said the plan for West Bank will be implemented within a few weeks. Netanyahu said the mapping process for annexation has not been completed yet. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Hamas movement has warned that Israel's takeover will spark a massive uprising. In a statement, Hamas said no power can change Jerusalem's position from being the Palestinian city and capital. Israel is expected to annex parts of the occupied West Bank, Jordan Valley, and East Jerusalem from July 1st. Turkish security forces say they have killed 4 militants of the Kurdistan Workers' Party in northern Iraq. In a statement, the Defense Ministry said the terrorists were killed in an air-backed anti-terror operation in the Avasin region. The ministry said the operation against the militants will continue. Ankara holds the fighter group responsible for the deaths of some 40,000 people in a 30-year conflict. We're now taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news. Welcome back. France says it does not want to see Russia drifting away from Europe, as maintaining dialogue is in the bloc's interest. In an interview, Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said France, however, condemns Russia's interference in Ukraine and Middle East. Le Drian said diplomatic relations must be upheld despite the gaps in number of positions of international conflicts. Drian said France works with its allies to bring them closer to Europe and push towards multilateralism. Foreign Minister said the world is no longer divided between two blocs like it was in the late 1940s. He said there is a possibility for dialogue and international cooperation in common interests such as health and collective security. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has lauded Russia, China, Iran and Cuba for their support, saying they are real friends of the country. In a televised speech, Maduro said these 4 countries have always provided help to Caracas and more humanitarian aid is coming. The president said the U.S. offered $20 million worth of assistance, but not a single dollar came through. The political crisis in Venezuela exacerbated in 2019 when opposition leader Juan Guaido declared himself interim president. Maduro blasted the move as a coup staged by Washington and said he was severing diplomatic ties with the U.S. While the U.S. and most of EU recognized Guaido as president, Russia, Iran, Cuba and Turkey voiced support for Maduro. In India, the textile industry is facing grave crisis as numerous mills have been shut down for more than 2 months due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite some relaxations, the industry has not been able to return to its normal functioning. Let's find out more in this report.
The COVID-19 pandemic has created a crisis across all the businesses in all over the world, and India is no exception. Along with other businesses, textile industry has faced blow of the virus with no workers amid lockdown. Hundreds of workers have left their native villages amid the scare, while the revenues of the textile have shrunk significantly.
Industry start nahi hui.
This industry cannot start without workers, so talks are going on to call back the workers as if this industry doesn't start soon. Textile looms, mills, and all the places of work of traders will not start too. This is why this demand has been put forward that if the workers want to come to Surat, the government, should open a way for them to return.
Despite India easing lockdown, textile traders are fighting for survival. They're left with no options to recoup their lost revenue.
The business cannot run without the workers. It is incomplete without them. If they return, there can be work during the upcoming festivals and the markets will run properly, or else markets won't be able to run without workers.
According to the official figures, India has 236,657 novel coronavirus cases with 6,642 deaths so far.
Hundreds of Moscow residents rushed to an open-air book fair in Red Square despite COVID-19 restrictions in place. Organizers said they implement various measures to halt the spread of the virus, but still, many publishers opted out to stay away from the fair. More in this report.
Weary of lockdown, Moscow's residents invigorate the Red Square. Clad in face masks and gloves, book clans have crowded to the first large gathering after the outbreak. Despite criticism, the book fair is largely seen as a small sign of gradual efforts to open the Russian capital back up amid the pandemic. Around 180 publishers displayed their stalls at the fair, which drew up to 600 visitors within hours. The fair's organizers said they have assured the required measures to safeguard people's safety. Chairs were placed 1 meter apart and people's temperatures were checked at the entrance.
We think it is very important now to provide a good mood for our readers as the life slowly returns to normal. Of course, we stick to all the safety requirements. As you can see, we all are wearing gloves and masks, all the staff. The salesperson also wear protection screens. We have sanitizers everywhere. We clean up regularly. Everything is tightly controlled.
Along with social distancing measures, officials ordered sanitation of the site and mandatory use of face masks and gloves.
We are not afraid. Of course, we stick to all the quarantine rules. The law makes us to, but we do not panic. The weight is being blown now.
The event was criticized from those who considered it an early jab toward the reopening of social events.
The self-isolation regime in Moscow has been prolonged until June 14. People need passes to leave their homes. They have schedules to go for a walk. I do not think that holding a festival at such a time is logical.
Russia has nearly 460,000 confirmed coronavirus cases so far. Lockdown restrictions will remain in place in Moscow until at least June 14th.
In China, tourism is helping lift people in the cliff-top village of Atelier in southwest Sichuan province out of poverty. Let's find out how in this report.
Atelier is a famous cliff village sitting high among the mountains in Lingshanji Autonomous Prefecture's Zhejiang County. Due to its isolated location, perched like the seat of a chair with near vertical cliffs both above and below, villagers must use a series of handmade ladders to scale the 800-meter high cliff.
When we were at school, we had to walk about 18 kilometers. We left home early and it would turn dark when we arrived at school. It was very dangerous.
The lack of access to the outside had stagnated the local economy. Life in the village gained nationwide attention in 2016 when a Chinese newspaper published a collection of photos. In August 2016, the local government spent 1 million yuan to add a steel ladder with a handrail.
After we built the steel ladder, we had access to water, electricity, and the internet. Many young people started to play on their phones, browse WeChat moments, and watch live streams online. The relationship with the outside world is getting closer. Our villagers can walk outside, and tourists from outside can also come in.
On May 14, some 80 households from Atelier moved to their new homes in the county seat. It is part of a massive relocation project in Zhaoji as China aims to eradicate poverty by the end of the year. Meanwhile, the construction of 7 schools and 3 hospitals around the relocation site is underway.
6 Swiss tourist destinations and the Principality of Liechtenstein are opening a property-free hotel this summer. Visitors can book hotel suites without walls and roof and experience the diversity of the region under the stars. Further details in this report.
Created by twin brothers Frank and Patrick Ricklin and partner Daniel Charbonnier, the Zero Real Estate project aims to explore traditional approaches to hospitality.
The idea is that with Zero Real Estate, we make others the performers by performing the concept of real estate without hotel rooms.
A night in the double room costs more than $300, including services of a white-gloved modern butler, often a local farmer in jeans and Wellington boots.
I think the reality of coronavirus plays into this concept. The room without a wall and roof also shows a kind of liberation. There is probably no other place to enjoy a better ventilated room than this during the summer in Switzerland.
Bookings have already started for the 7 suites, which open from July 1st.
A new rail cargo service has been launched between China and Europe. It will travel from Hefei, the capital of East China's new province, to Tilburg in the Netherlands. The train carrying 82 TEUs of cargo will travel around 15 days before arriving at the destination. The China-Europe freight train service now has 20 routes linking Hefei with 8 countries. These include Germany, Poland, Finland and Netherlands as well as Russia. So far this year, a total of 194 China-Europe freight trains have departed from Hefei. Japan's economy contracted at an annualized of 2.2% in the first quarter of 2020 entering a technical recession. The revised figure was less than the 3.4% contraction in a preliminary estimate by the Cabinet Office showed. The revised data showed that private consumption declined 0.8% from the previous quarter, compared with an initial estimate of a 0.7% fall, but capital investment rose by 1.9%, stronger than the initial estimate of a 0.5% decrease. The export-dependent economy contracted at an annual rate of over 7% in the last quarter of 2019. Japan's economy was affected by the fallout of COVID-19, but it was already stagnant in recent years due to a trade conflict between US and China. European stocks are trading mixed as markets weigh an economic recovery from the coronavirus pandemic and ongoing global protest against racism. The choppy session is marking a divergence from the largely positive trends seen in Asia. Frankfurt's DAX is trading fractionally lower after German pharmaceutical supplier Certrus stocks dropped by about 9%. London's FTSE 100 has gained a fraction, while CAC 40 in Paris is trading marginally lower. In Asia, Nikkei 225 led the gains, closing nearly 1.5%, as shares of robot maker FANU gained over 4%. Shanghai Composite and Seoul's Kospi also posted gains. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index remained flat. Meanwhile, international benchmark Brent crude oil price has gained over 1%, powering early gains. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.